Milton is forecast to make landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast by Wednesday.
And the storm is already one for the books in just under a day. It ramped up by 90 miles per hour, making it the third fastest to hit the Atlantic since way back in 1982.
Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls is tracking Milton for us and watching. This looks pretty fierce, Emily.
It really does, and we have a lot of warm waters that are continuing to fuel this. So as you mentioned, it's been rapidly intensifying. Take a look at our sea surface temperatures through the Gulf, right around 85, 86 degrees. Now, in order to form, let alone sustain a hurricane, we need sea surface temperatures that are right around 80 degrees. So we have plenty of warm water that's going to be fueling this thing as it begins to make its way over toward Florida. The latest update that just came out now has maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. Again, that's the sustained winds. The wind gusts are now up to 220 miles per hour. So this is a Category 5. By the way, a Category 5 storm starts at 157 miles per hour, and we're at 180 for those maximum sustained winds. Here's the one silver lining that we do have to talk about with this storm is that it is expected to weaken slightly as it approaches the west coast of Florida, likely making landfall as a high-end Category 3, possibly a Category 4 somewhere near Tampa. But this is going to be a really devastating storm as it rolls in late tomorrow, or I should say late on Wednesday.
In Mexico has been brutally murdered barely days after he took office. Alejandro Arcos was killed in the state of Guerrero after he took charge as the mayor of Chilpancingo last week. My report suggests that Arcos was decapitated. An official confirmation is still pending. The state governor has expressed outrage over the gruesome murder that has once again highlighted the country's battle against cartel-related violence and crime. The Institutional Revolutionary Party condemned the killing as a cowardly crime. Arcos' murder comes just days after another city official, Francisco Tapia, was also killed. Both young officials had been in office for less than a week. Guerrero is particularly plagued by cartel violence. 1,890 murders were recorded last year, mostly due to rival drug cartels fighting for control. Over 450,000 people have been killed across Mexico, with tens of thousands still missing since 2006, when the government deployed the army to fight drug trafficking. Local politicians have often been targeted in the violence linked to corruption and the multi-billion-dollar drug trade.
Canada has joined a new club. We're one of the lowest low fertility countries in the world. Researchers say it takes a rate of 1.3 children per woman to reach that status. And last year, our fertility rate fell to a record low of 1.26. That means we're now part of a club that includes South Korea, Spain, Italy, and Japan. The same amount of babies were born in 2023 compared to the year before, about 350,000. But the fertility rate fell because there was more people of childbearing age living here in 2023. In other words, there are more Canadians who can have children but are choosing not to. Births have generally been going down since 2017. So why is that? One family planning doctor told us the high cost of living plays a part. Many people don't feel comfortable having kids without economic and housing stability. So they're waiting to have children until they're older. And being older comes with complications. The report says it's why Canada could have the highest rate of premature births in 2023, the most recorded in 50 years. 10 out of the 13 provinces and territories in Canada had their lowest birth rate on record. But which one is the lowest? It's BC, followed by Yukon and Nova Scotia.
To Toronto now, and a disturbing story about what may have been an extreme case of road rage. 2 people are in hospital after a crash that ended with a vehicle flipping over. CP24's Andrew Brennan is standing by live with more on this. Andrew, walk us through what happened here. It seems to be quite a dramatic chain of events.
Yeah, it was based on what police are saying, Scott, absolutely. And I'll walk this way to show you, well, a mangled mess of a vehicle that's flipped entirely 180'd and just strewn in the street now. And according to Toronto police, as you mentioned, this is a suspected case of extreme road rage. We'll emphasize the extreme not only because of the damage here, but also because of what police say transpired. They say that there was another vehicle that was ultimately used as a getaway vehicle after shots were fired from that pickup truck, and then the driver also, after this vehicle came to a stop, for lack of a better way to put it, the driver of that vehicle, according to police, got out of the pickup truck and then fired more shots at the 2 people inside, and the vehicle itself. Now, police did say that those two people, a man and woman, were hospitalized with injuries that are described as serious, but thankfully they're expected to be okay and recover without any lasting harm. But also, this is when we talk about incidents of road rage, suspected or otherwise, sometimes it's hyperbolic. People get upset at each other as a fender bender and they start yelling. But this is at least an alleged case of something that much more serious. Someone to the point of anger that they use a firearm in a crowded street, no less the longest street in Canada and one of the most widely used by not only vehicle but pedestrian traffic as well. And this is the lasting impact and damage. Police have been here for hours now. This happened around 11 a.m., a little before 11 a.m. local time, and it remains to be seen how much longer Canada's longest street will be closed for a few blocks. They did open the northbound side a few minutes ago for anyone that's tuning in from Toronto and potentially looking to get home, get through North York. They did open up the northbound lanes. But just in terms of the severity of something like this, and in terms of trying to make sure that all evidence is collected, this could take even that much longer because we don't even see a flatbed nearby to pick up this vehicle. And it remains to be seen how much effort it'll take to get it back onto the tires so it can be wheeled out of here, literally. Scott, I'll send it back to you, but if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
All right, Andrew Brandon, walk us through this dramatic chain of events that touches on pretty much everything. Andrew, thanks so much, my friend, for keeping us up to speed.
A missile was reportedly fired from Yemen towards Israel, triggering air raid sirens across large areas of central Israel. The Israeli military claimed to have successfully intercepted the missile. Hezbollah says they targeted a military base south of Haifa using Fadi-1 missiles, injuring many civilians. Here's a report.
Hezbollah rockets struck Israel on Monday, on the first anniversary of the Gaza war. That's as Israel looked poised to expand ground incursions into Lebanon. Iran-backed Hezbollah said it targeted a military base in Israel's city Haifa with a salvo of missiles. The group, allies of Palestinian militants group Hamas, said it also launched another attack on Israeli city Tiberias. This strike, 1 year on from Hamas's October 7th cross-border raid into Israel, underlines how much the Gaza conflict has since spread across the Middle East. There are fears that the US, Israel's superpower ally, and Iran will be sucked in. In this latest attack, Israel's military said 5 rockets were launched from Lebanon at Haifa and that 15 were fired at Tiberias, with some shot down. Hamas, meanwhile, targeted Israel's commercial capital, Tel Aviv, with a missile salvo, the group said. This barrage comes following a series of deadly blows against Hezbollah in Lebanon in recent weeks. Mohamed Kanso is one of 1.2 million people displaced in Lebanon while fleeing Israeli attack. He says this war has been imposed on his country and that he did not expect to be living on the streets. Israel accuses Hezbollah of deliberately embedding its command centres and weaponry beneath residential buildings in the heart of Beirut. Hezbollah denies storing weapons among civilians. On Sunday night, Israeli missiles rained down across the Lebanese capital. Many fear Israel will unleash on Lebanon the same scale of destruction it waged on Gaza.
2 Chinese nationals were killed in an explosion near the international airport of the southern Pakistani city of Karachi on Sunday night. That's according to the Chinese embassy in Pakistan in what it called a terrorist attack. In a statement emailed to journalists, the Baluch Liberation Army claimed responsibility for the explosion, stating it was aimed at a convoy of Chinese engineers using a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. Karachi police did not immediately respond to requests for comment. However, Deputy Inspector General of Police Asfar Mahisar gave this update late Sunday.
According to initial information, an oil tanker caught fire, which spread to several other vehicles, causing collateral damage. We're determining if there was an element of terrorism involved, which we cannot rule out at the moment.
Pakistan broadcaster Geo News reported at least 10 others were injured in the blast. The Chinese embassy condemned the attack, expressing condolences to the victims and their families. The BLA, seeking independence for Baluchistan, has a history of targeting Chinese interests. The group accusing Beijing of aiding in the exploitation of the region.
Israel's military is expanding its attacks on Lebanon as the IDF warns it will be launching an operation on the south coast. Deborah Haynes has the story.
The military has just announced that here in southern Lebanon, which is behind me, they said that their Air Force conducted what they described as intelligence-led operations to target Hezbollah positions, striking 120 targets within the space of an hour. It doesn't say exactly when that was today, but earlier in the afternoon, when I was talking to you, I was describing how we could hear the sound, the boom of airstrikes. We counted 4 in about a minute, and I can actually hear a warplane above me at the moment. And this is a development in this land offensive, this ground offensive, which was officially confirmed in the early hours of Tuesday morning last week, but very much seemed to have already started by this time last Monday, when we could already hear artillery rounds and strikes into southern Lebanon. At that time, it was more ground-based artillery that we could hear and mortar rounds. But in the last day or so, we've definitely heard an increase in airstrikes, which would signal that the troops on the ground are locating positions that they believe to be legitimate targets and calling in airstrikes. But obviously, all the while, for people living in southern Lebanon, it's incredibly terrifying. There's been an increasingly wider area of evacuation where people are being told by the Israeli military that they need to move. Israel says that this operation that it's launched, it's going to be limited and targeted. The objective to move Hezbollah beyond the Litani River so that they can't fire rockets into northern Israel. Yet the scale of that challenge is huge. And if you compare to what Israel's been doing against Hamas in Gaza, the fact that a year on from that major operation, Hamas, while very much significantly degraded, they are still able to launch rockets into Israel. And the fear for people who have had to flee the communities along the north, around 60,000 people, they fear about ever being able to come back, even if the operation is successful in terms of pushing Hezbollah fighters and their forces beyond that river. They worry that because of the tunnels that have been dug, according to the Israeli military, that Hezbollah would still pose the kind of threat that they saw happen in the south, and they're terrified that an October the 7th style massacre could be launched here into northern Israel.
As war rages on, the mounting conflict with Iran, which backs both Hamas and Hezbollah, is threatening to drag the wider region into an even more dangerous conflagration. Tehran has today praised the Hamas attack of October 7th, describing it as a decisive moment for Palestinians and criticising Israel's allies, notably the United States, accusing it of being complicit in Israeli actions. Well, for the very latest, let's cross live now to Saeed Azimi, our correspondent in Tehran. Good to have you with us on the programme this evening, Saeed. Firstly, Israel and the world has been marking the first anniversary of the Hamas massacre. How is all of this being viewed where you are in Tehran?
As you said, Sharon, the Iranian government and the establishment organized several commemoration ceremonies across the country to laud and praise the Hamas attack, which is dubbed as the Al-Aqsa operation in among the countries of the Axis of Resistance and among the Palestinians themselves. But these ceremonies were mostly held in closed doors. There were no, large masses outside celebrating this. The general public didn't care at all that it was October 7th. I think most of them had that actually forgotten that it was the anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel.
And Saeed, all of this happening as Iran continues to brace for Israeli retaliation following that massive missile attack last week.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The IRGC officials and military sources spoke to an IRGC-affiliated Iranian media today, saying that they have prepared at least 10 plans to respond to a possible Israeli attack, saying that bank of targets in each plan differs, and these plans do possess the ability to be upgraded every day. And they also said that the response that Iran gives might not be proportionate to what Israel gives to Iran, and it might be different, it might be hybrid, and it might even be harder.
And what are ordinary people expecting?
The atmosphere is very dark and very ambiguous. The shadow of the war, the fear and shadow of the war has scared a lot of people. They are left devastated. They are left brokenhearted. Most of these are not because of the threats against the Iranian people and the Iran as a country. Most of the people I know are devastated seeing the images coming out from Beirut, and they have the fear that Iran would be dragged into something broad like what is happening in Beirut and Gaza right now.
Okay, we shall leave it there for now, Saeed. That is Saeed Azimi, our correspondent, joining us live there from the Iranian capital.
Israel's defense minister says all options are on the table when it comes to Iran. Rebecca Heinrich joins me now, security expert. Rebecca, will the Israelis attack Iranian nuclear facilities? And if they do, what would be the repercussions?
Well, Stuart, if they're going to do it, now is the time to do it. They have momentum on their side. There's basically what I consider 3 levels of attack. They can just basically attack the facilities that were related to this latest attack from Iran against Israel. That would be symbolic. And then you have an attack where they go after the oil fields, go after oil exports. And then you have the nuclear facilities they could attack. If they're going to do the second one, though, they might as well go for the third one. If Iran has been so bold and so willing to take on risk to attack Israel not once but twice with ballistic missiles, I don't understand how anybody can say at this point that Israel does not have the right and the strategic imperative to go after those nuclear facilities.
President Biden is urging restraint. Israel apparently is not listening to President Biden. Would they listen to a Harris if she was elected president?
I don't think that they would. I see both of them the same. She's the incumbent. She doesn't really have a much stronger presence or influence relative to President Biden. And Israel's going to do what it needs to defend itself. And as J.D. Vance just said, basically the Biden administration has tried to go both ways, tried to say they support Israel, but then they restrain Israel. Of course, they do that to the Ukrainians as well, say they support them and then restrain them. I would note, though, too, there's other countries that would be very grateful to the Israelis if they were to take out this nuclear facility. They won't say it publicly because of their populations, but the Gulf states, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, all of those countries would be relieved to know that the Israelis have finally taken out what is a threat to the entire region, which is the potential of the Iranians having a nuclear capability.
What is the role of Saudi Arabia in this? We really haven't heard much at all.
No, they're really caught between a rock and a hard place. They've got a population, obviously, that's going to be sympathetic to the Palestinians. But you've got the Saudis and their current leadership wants to have a much more stable region. They still understand that the Iranians are the primary source of instability and terrorism throughout the Middle East. And so the Saudis have been a good partner to the United States, especially on energy. And really, the Biden administration came in and undid the good working relationship that the Trump administration had with the Saudis. We really need to get back to that. Work with the Gulf partners that want to help us squeeze the Iranians, bankrupt the Iranian regime, and enable the Israelis to defend themselves. One last point. You really got to make a difference between the Iran regime and the Iranian people. The Iranian people are the ones that have suffered the most from the totalitarianism of the Iran regime.
Got it. Rebecca Heinrich, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again real soon, I do hope.